Couch in space!
Oh, look, it's a couch.
Looks comfortable.
And it's in space.
Cool.
Couch in space!
Okay, we're ready to rock and roll into another Couch in Space, and today I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Emma Slade, and she's a New Zealand film producer. I know it sounds fabulous, and you know what it actually is, because Emma, you're one of the most well-travelled people that I know. How many countries have you been in?
Oh, for work, a lot. Been to America quite a bit, and to France, and all the places where there are film festivals normally, and film markets.
At Netherlands as well? Wasn't that one of them?
I have been to the Netherlands, not for a market, but I have been there. Yeah,
wow.
and to UK and all around Europe and Germany.
Yeah.
And Australia, of course, all the normal places.
Yeah. And you started, I guess, in television, like everyone else?
I did. I started in television in the UK actually, and then came back to New Zealand and continued on in television, but always dreamed of working in film, and so I made the transition.
And what was it about film in particular that drew your attention?
I think film is like visual poetry.
Okay.
And I just love it. And I'm sort of quite a creative person myself, so I was just really drawn to it.
Right.
And I feel it's going into that world of make-believe, I suppose, and create, and people being able to create a world and enter into it, and a form of escapism maybe.
And isn't cinema great though, because you've got that big dark room. It always starts in black, and then the film runs for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and you just take people away, for that time.
Absolutely.
You've got their undivided attention to show a little bit of piece of art.
And I love going to the cinema. I mean, I enjoy it at home, but I love going to the cinema. It is an experience for me, so I'm a real lover of it. And it's my favourite thing to do.
And what about, as a producer, you do a lot of people management. It's all about people. It's getting the right kind of people together. And there's so many people involved in making a film. I mean, anyone can just see the credits. And it's not a one-man band by any stretch of the imagination. Tell us about some of those challenges of, one, maybe getting these people together, and two, one, keeping them together, and then having a product at the end of it.
Well, I mean, the nature of what we do is such a collaborative sort of thing, and which is one of the things I love the most about it. And I think getting the right personalities are really important. As a person and as a producer, I think that even though we work within quite a hierarchical structure, I think it's really important to place value in every person, regardless if you're the runner or if you're the executive producer. Everybody needs to be treated with respect and have value. And I think if that's a good place to start, because if you don't have a very good runner, your whole project can fall over. So it's really important that everyone is really valued. And I think that so when looking for putting a crew and cast together, matching personalities is really important. And choosing HODs that have good teams. HODs in his department can bring teams of people together that help sort of combine. And I think it's really important, particularly for independent features, because there's a lot of emotion that goes into it. Bit different from a studio film. Where it's often driven for money and for a commercial purpose, where there is a lot of emotion attached to independent films, and a lot of people's hearts are in it, particularly for the creatives.
Because the money's definitely not all there, so you got to fill it up with something, so it might as well be heart.
It's true. Quite often the money's not there. Well, it's not very much anyway.
No,
it's certainly not in comparison. And so people are doing it for other reasons other than money. So, so I think there's high stakes. For everybody, and each film has a little bit of someone's soul in it. Well, I think it should anyway, and that's what gives it a bit of magic.
I think so, especially in independent film, isn't it?
And that's my passion, really.
Right.
I mean, I appreciate studio films and enjoy some of them, not many, but some. But I really, really love independent cinema, and I think it says a lot about what it is to be human, which I think is really interesting.
I love that it's so raw, and I love that it's indulgent, and yes, like you said, human. You see the flaws, and you see the successes and things like that, And I guess the older I get, the more I appreciate independent. I mean, I love a good special effects flick, but with those kind of films, it's rare that you get really emotionally attached, whereas you go to some of these film festival films and you come out of it almost shaken, you know, like you've taken on this journey of maybe some old lady or something like this, but the filmmakers, they have this heart and passion in it, and you walk away with something.
That's good. That's the point. So that's good news. Yeah, it is. I think that I watched the McQueen doco just the other day, and he made this statement about he just wanted people to feel something.
Right.
And even if you hated it or you loved it, but either one is okay as long as you had some response. If you sort of walked out of there not feeling anything, it means that you hadn't really done your job and you hadn't connected with your audience, which I think is really, really important.
And it's almost like that is the independent film currency, isn't it? It's not making money at the box office, but having someone feel and getting some attention out of people really getting riled up about the subject matter and the topic.
Well, hopefully you do find an audience. Otherwise, there's not much point. But I think it doesn't have to be like those box office hits, because often those box office hits are tied to marketing as well.
Yeah.
So as good as your film may be, if you haven't got a marketing budget to support it, it's sometimes very hard to reach out to audiences. Yeah. There's a lot of material out there, and you can access it on every screen available so often. So it's really hard to compete in that very noisy marketplace. So trying to connect with people with your material. So if you find an audience, I think you've done well, and that's really the key, is to get your material.
But is finding an audience almost like the lottery of something going viral? If you don't have a studio marketing budget, you know,
yes,
like you said, there's a lot of noise.
I think that there's an element of that, and being able to and hook into that, and also different films suit different people for different reasons. So being very clear on who you're making it for and how you're going to connect to them. Because I think often people, once they're actually in the theatre, they often will enjoy the film, but it's just getting them there that's quite hard. And life's so busy for people, so that's really tricky as well. And then when you're looking on screen, and whether it be Netflix or one of those other platforms, there's so much content. It's like, how do you choose what you're going to watch? How do you find it?
Finding it, I think, is the biggest one, isn't it? I mean, I go on Netflix, it gives me recommendation based on what I've watched in the past. But to be honest, it's very ho-hum. It's, okay, I watched an action flick, so now I've got another 10 action flicks to watch.
At least, also.
But it doesn't challenge you in any way. I would love for Netflix to go, hey, how about something like this out of the box? You know, just because it's actually a good film, you know. There doesn't seem to be that in that, not that I've discovered, really.
Well, even you know how they use, when you go into really good bookshops and you have people who work in the bookshop and they've read the book and they'll write like a little recommendation on different books, and even DVD stores. Sometimes if you went into the art house type DVD stores, they would, and they would support independent cinema, and they'd be like, oh yes, I've watched that one. Often people are really, really into film in a major way, but they've watched lots and lots of material and they can make recommendations. It's a shame that some of these platforms don't create more of that, so it's not such a sort of almost like a sausage factory. It'd be quite interesting if they did that.
Would it be interesting to have like a group of people that watch films and review them? Like, I mean, if you expect the reviews, because you got movie reviewers and critics, you know. I want a film to be reviewed, not criticised, because I think any film that is made is a major achievement, regardless. You know, that is something I have definitely learned from watching you and some other people in the film industry. I think it is absolutely amazing that any film ever gets made, considering everything is totally stacked against you a lot of the time.
That's true. So, I completely agree.
So finding that audience, you almost go to, I guess, people that you respect, don't you? That word of mouth almost. Rather than going through a critic and going through what's advertised on TV, wouldn't it be great to have an independent body almost that reviews a film and gives you some insights into the film without you having to be the one to search for it?
I think even if a film is critically acclaimed, it doesn't necessarily mean it will find its audience.
No.
So even if you have a film that does really well and it's sort of with reviews, won't necessarily translate into box office. So I think it's kind of defining what your film is about and really who you're targeting and how you're going to reach that target audience. Okay. And there are some audiences who are sort of lean more towards independent cinema than others. And sort of, working out how to connect with that.
How does when you have a film and you're proud of it, is the main goal you aim it for a festival? Is that the initial?
That's a very common approach for independent cinema. Just trying to give it, to elevate it and to give it sort of a profile. Because if it does go into a cinema and it achieves well,
yes,
and it gets like an audience award or best whatever, then it gets all the media going, and then that often will penetrate in sort of different territories, and then someone will come along and want to buy it on the basis. I suppose a film often will go through lots of litmus tests, I sort of think of them as, and they all sort of help narrow down where the quality is. I mean, not always, but that will often help. So I think it's a normal pathway for people to go, is to try and get it into well-recognised film festivals. And film festivals are sort of ranked. You sort of have your A-list, B-list, C-list and so forth.
Right, okay.
So if you get it into an A-list film festival,
right,
you've got a good chance of it.
You can put that on your poster.
Yes, you put that on your poster. and also critic reviews. You'll see often independent films having all the 5 stars or 4 stars up there to show that it's something.
Sometimes even in the trailer, in the cinema trailer.
Absolutely. And just to give it, that's totally right. It's just to show that this has had a sort of seal of quality to it.
Right.
And it's worth people investing the time and energy in watching it.
Do independent films get audience review, like the big cinemas? They go through, they get rated by the audience, and according to that feedback, they change the characters or the edits slightly. Yep. Does that happen for independent films as well? Is that a normal strategy for film?
I think it depends where you are.
Oh, okay.
But in different places do it in different ways. But in New Zealand, if you have New Zealand Film Commission funding, then they insist upon having a test screening.
Oh, do they?
And then they sort of organise it all within the...
With Joe Average or within the organisation?
They have a company that they work alongside with and within their own internal resources at the Film Commission, and they go out and they find the audience that's applicable to your film, plus other audiences outside of that film in case there's some surprise results from those sort of outsiders. Okay. And then they show the film, and you have a questionnaire and a sort of Q&A time afterwards, and then you collate all the results and see if you're going to make any changes based on the feedback that you've got. So how much clout does that feedback have? Is it a major? It's interesting because I think there's a mixed response, because some films can do really well in a test screening and then not so well in the box office, and you think, why was that? Oh God! But then so there's no guarantee in anything in this business, including that. And I mean, I can see that there is value to test screenings, but at the same time, you don't want to hang everything on it as well. Yeah. So it's balance. You have to balance it out, but it is tricky. It's one way of any way you can to try and get some sort of access to your audience is helpful. Right. I know there are other people who also really believe in friends and family screenings. Yes. And even though you would think that they would be kind on the project because they're associated with the filmmakers, you could also ask for their honesty to be really frank about how they felt about it, and probably would give more direct feedback. And you could quiz them on it a bit more, and they'll be more generous. Right. They won't just write a one-liner and circle 4 out of 5 or whatever, they'll... Because chances are they at least understand the process a bit more, don't they? Possibly, it depends on who you're talking to. So have you ever come across an experience where a test screening like that just revealed something about the film that you never even thought would be there? Well, it's quite interesting. It's a bit like profiling, because you also ask the person who's filling out the questionnaire what other things interest them. And so it's quite interesting creating without knowing who the people are, of course, because they're kind of people off the street, what sort of books they've read and what other films have they seen recently, and what films they like to go to that's coming up. So you get some sort of idea on the profile of this person, and where your film sort of fits with them, whether they hated it or if they quite enjoyed it. And then there are some things that they say about the film what they didn't like. And when you start seeing sort of those themes coming through in other questionnaires.
Okay.
It's from other people. It's quite interesting. So you can start getting hints of where you might have to do some tweaking. But then there are some things that you can't do anything about as well.
That's right.
So, yeah, and some people might say, oh, I hated that, and then the next person goes, I love it. So it can be quite confusing too.
Again, what can you do with that, hey?
Yeah.
And again, I think a lot of films have many heads that they have to go through. And again, it's just amazing that anything ever gets finished and actually released at some stage or another. So film is something you're obviously very passionate about, and the people that you surround yourself with, that's the most important thing, isn't it? So
I think it's
personality.
Really important. Yeah, personality is a big thing. And also, I really like exploring new and fresh talent.
Okay.
Because I actually think it's such a community to make a film, and any personality and every skill set, there is a place for someone on a film. It really does take all sorts. And so, yeah, so I think there's anyone of sort of value. And I think the key things is people who are hardworking. That's really, really important.
Right.
People who have initiative and who are passionate. And I think those qualities are sometimes potentially even more important than experience.
Right.
Not always, but often. I just think it's just really, really critical.
Yeah.
And you can, if you have someone who is quite sort of new to it, but really enthusiastic and wanting to try really, really hard and has a desire, they're really easy to work with and to help steer them in a certain way. So I find that part really exciting and interesting.
It's wonderful when you find passionate people. I think it is the ultimate. I believe anyone can learn anything, but you cannot teach someone to be passionate about something. It's a losing battle. They can be really great, but if they're only giving you 10, 20% and are unreliable, then it's crazy.
Yeah, and you have to work out what lights people's fires, and then that's the work that they should be working in. Don't give someone a task that they're not interested in. You just won't get the results. No one likes doing stuff that they hate doing, so you're best to try and match the job with people's skill set.
Right. Going back to art form, film is an art form, and unfortunately film has so many restrictions on it. Like, how do you, I guess in this case you're dealing with writers and directors who obviously have a vision. It must be so hard for them to constantly work within a very, I guess, a narrow framework, like an artist, like a painter, for instance. He's left alone, he chooses to paint, and at the end of the day he's got a painting. But because there's so much money involved in film, from the get-go, you're making the film not to please you as an artist, you're making the film as whoever's funding it and what their expectations are. And how do you navigate those waters? Where do you draw the line with potential investors? Say, no, this is what the film is, or telling the director or the writer, no, you got to pull back because we can't afford that vision, for instance. Can you, talk about that dynamic? Because that fascinates me.
It's a minefield. It is a minefield, and I think it's probably one of the hardest parts of a producer's job.
Is that why film is not an art form?
No, I think it is an art form. But it's really interesting because where you have, where the creative and finance meet.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's an art form that is to be appreciated by a wide audience. And
why though? Why does it have to be a wide audience?
Because then it is. I see. Well, the comment that you made before about films being indulgent, I don't agree with that because I don't think films should be indulgent.
Really?
No, I don't. I think actually that you've missed the point if you think it's indulgent.
Why?
Because I don't think it's made for you or you alone. If you want to do that, then you should take your own money and you should go and make it and do what you want to do. And if anyone else is interested in seeing it, then so be it. But I mean, it's for you,
That's right.
Or go and paint a picture, or go and write a book.
Yeah.
But if you actually want to have a film, which is all about connection and connecting with audiences, then that's what it's about. And you need a lot of money to make that because it takes a huge army of people to make a film come together and for that film to be realised. And I think as a producer, we create a really solid, I think, this is what I think a producer's job is, is you're creating a solid platform and support network and leadership to a creative team, which is led by the director.
Yeah.
But the writer and the editor and the production designer and so on and so forth, and the DOP are all contributors and are right behind the director as well. And they, in that creative vision, is when it meets the finance, that's when it's it is really challenging.
Yeah.
Because it's the financial side of it and the marketing and business, not marketing, the business side of it can be really brutal.
Yeah.
And can be very off-putting for the creative team. And so the producer is the person that has to walk that line and will take that information and give it to the creative team so it's given in a meaningful way and is not obstructive or destructive to what's going on.
Okay.
It needs to be constructive. But it's actually really important because often that money will come from the marketplace. And whether it be buyers or distributors or sales agents or whatever, they have their ear close to the ground, theoretically, to what the marketplace is wanting and how projects are performing and how films are doing. So they kind of have some idea about if it's going off in a certain direction, they might think, well, it's not going to do the business that it needs to do. And that side of the business is very money orientated.
Yes.
You know, how many bums on seats and equals this amount of dollars.
Yes.
And if those numbers start to drop, then that's how they go. But there's also that the creative need to be concerned about that too, because they are trying to reach an audience. So there is a balance there, and I think that's the thing that the producer has to do is balance those two elements out, and both are really valuable. But I also think that tension is healthy.
Right.
I also think even within the creative team, it's healthy if there's tension on the project, because the project is king or queen, depending on how you're looking at it, but it's the most important thing of all, more important than any ego or any person. That's the most important thing, and it needs to be really well looked after and well nurtured. Right through the value chain of the whole entire process, right until it's out into the world and really looked after. And on that basis, if you always make sure the project is the priority, then things kind of work themselves out.
And I think that's true for most film people that work in film. Even though things get heated and things get stressful, everyone's playing their part to make that film the best that it can be, hey? Whether it's the promoter, whether it's the director or the producer. That's something I've really noticed, that it is, egos aside, they're coming from a place where, well, if they just did this, it would be so much better, and then blah, 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 it'll make more money, people will be more engaged and things like that. But yeah, you have so many different languages of describing the film. So you've got the art or the creative of describing the film, and then you've got the marketing box office, and it's amazing how many holes it's just a little film, has to fit in order to eventually find its place. But it always does, hey? It always finds its place.
Well, hopefully it does.
Well,
most of the time, no, I think so.
Time.
Yeah, you're right. I'm finding it sort of home. Yeah, it's tricky. And there are some films that are made for phenomenal amounts of money and huge marketing budgets, and they fail. And there are some films that are tiny and that have very little money to them in any shape or form, and they just somehow pop, and people find them and they just do extraordinarily well.
Yeah.
And then there are lots that kind of just don't, just sort of sit in the middle ground. But I just think no one knows what film is going to really burst and pop for audiences.
Right.
And so everyone, I think, is always searching for that all the time. And so makes it quite a subjective process. Because even people might say, oh, well, I think you need to do this, and someone else, because I think the audience would appreciate this. And then someone else might go, well, no, I think it should be this way. And so you're in this thing where everyone is coming from a subjective place, trying to guess what they think is the best thing for the project and what is going to connect with the audience, and then working out which way you go. And that's also something as a producer's role, helping choose which pathway to take. It's tricky stuff.
It's tricky stuff.
Why are we doing it?
I don't know. Why are you still doing it?
No, I love it. I really love it. I absolutely love it. And the people I work with are amazing, so I think myself is very lucky.
One thing that's always baffled me about the whole film process it's like you said earlier about films being, you know, lots of money films can fail, and also small films can really succeed. But it all starts with a script, and the script at the end of the day is locked off before photography begins. Am I right in assuming that?
Yeah.
It has to, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So people have gone through and signed the script off, and then they make the film. And then they make a bad film, and you know, couldn't people see from the script on that it wasn't going to work?
I think
like what is that process?
I think that the development process is tricky because it's hard to know when you've done it.
Yes.
Like when you know, when do you say, oh, this draft is it? And actually, you do keep working on the draft even when you're shooting, but you do have a shooting script or a financing script, and you say, okay, we're raising the finance on this script here.
Yes.
And so you can make tweaks and things afterwards, but generally that's the locked off script for shooting. And no one sets out to make a bad film.
No.
You know, that's only the benefit of hindsight. But everyone, you kind of start off, and when you choose to sort of finish work on a script. The other thing is that people say that there are sort of 3 stages of making the project, and you write the film. That's one way, and then you do it again in the shoot, and then you do it again in the edit.
Right, yeah,
so,
that's right.
You're kind of recreating it in each one of those steps, which you'll appreciate.
Yeah, the mini steps.
Totally, as a project maker yourself. So I think that that's the case for film as well. But knowing when to stop the development, because you can find yourself swimming around in development for a long time, and you go, okay, how are we going to break out of this? And you do put scripts out to international readers and get other people to read it and go, okay, you know, I have a pile of scripts here, and I'm a professional reader of scripts, and I know what's good and what's not, and I give your one the tick. You go, okay, great, that's a sign of endorsement. So you're trying to put it give it little tests all the way through to check the quality of it, because when you're quite close to the material, sometimes it is quite hard to get to maintain perspective. So you do need outside voices and fresh eyes and fresh ears to have a look and see and go, yeah, that's working, or no, it's not.
Because it's all encompassing. What, an average film is like 3-4 months?
What's more than that?
I've come to, well, if you count pre-production and post-production, a lot longer than that.
For development, it can be up, 5, 7, sometimes 10, 15 years. But I mean, so, development can take however long it needs to take, but a solid period of time. And then you go into, once you've got all your cast attached and you've got all your financing, which also takes time as well. And then you go into pre-production, and then you shoot it, and then you have to post, and post always takes a long time. So normally from the time of, roughly speaking, from the beginning of, let's say, pre-production through to delivering the film to go out into the world, that could take about a year. Depending on how long you shoot for and how long the edit is for. But roughly speaking, for an independent film, it'd be about that.
And critics is, I guess, films, everyone seems to have an opinion on films, hey? I guess it's a vulnerable art form, because once it's there for everyone to see, I think for most part people actually really like a film, or they really don't like the film. I think it's very rare people go, ho-hum. I think I'm right in saying that, hey, that people are so visually literate nowadays. They've seen so many films, they've seen all the stories before. Most films have a certain structure that, need to hit certain beats, so you come out of the film feeling fulfilled, and you see the character's story develop. But isn't it amazing that I've lost my train of thought now.
I think it's really valuable that audiences are so discerning. I think it's actually a really good thing.
No one is complacent about it, because it's a story, and
I think it's
humans
okay.
love stories.
And if people want, it's good that people critique it. I think it comes back to that thing I was saying about before with Alexander McQueen saying, you just have to feel something. And if you hate it, and why you hated it, and what didn't work for you, but trying to create a dialogue around a film. But I think if a film actually managed to say something about what it is to be human, I personally, but that's because those are the kind of films I really love. I think. Well,
humans are making the film, so it should be about something human.
Just something that you can learn about yourself and about the place you live,
Yeah.
and the world around you and what things mean and give you some sort of insight.
Yeah.
For me, if I could achieve that, for me a film would be a success, even if it was to a small audience.
Right.
I feel like it would have succeeded. But yeah, so that's, I think that's really interesting. And just being able to connect with people in a sort of meaningful way. But I do think it's of value. I think we're lucky to have audiences that are so literate,
Yes.
film literate.
But therein also lies that challenge of how do you please someone who's almost seen it all before in a way,
Well, that's true. And that's very interesting because I think it's hard.
Yeah.
You have to come up with really interesting, innovative ideas that are unique and bold. And it feels not like it's a cliche.
Yeah.
So I think, but we've got some in New Zealand, and certainly some of the people I'm working with are just so clever.
Yeah.
And they're coming up with really, just when you think, are there really any other news stories out there? For you? Like, yep, there are. And it's just really exciting.
I think so too.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's very cool.
Do you think there's a big buzz about artificial intelligence these days, and everyone is scrabbling for making AIs be the next big thing? Like there's an AI that can edit now. If you load in the script, it can do the cutaways for you. You can actually randomize it so it goes from a mid shot to a wide shot, it's meant to be like a human person editing it kind of thing. Do you see artificial intelligence creeping into the filmmaking process anytime soon?
I think,
judging because you would know each person's value from the DOP to the grip, is there a process that could be artificial intelligence enhanced that will make the filmmaking process, I don't know, more amazing?
it's a bit like, for me, it'd be like taking Monet and going paint by numbers.
Yeah.
And yes, you probably could try and recreate it, but it would be the magic, which is only given by human beings.
Yes.
This is obviously very much my own opinion.
No, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, but I think there is magic that human beings bring, and when these really brilliant brains work together and collaborate together, that is the thing that creates the magic and creates something very special and unique.
Yes.
And I think it doesn't matter how much programming you were to pump into an AI, it wouldn't. I just don't. It would be like painting by numbers a little bit. I think for me, and I'm sure I'll be proven wrong at some point, but that's sort of how I think about it at the moment, for sure.
No, I think you're right. I think AIs at this point are quite stupid because they have so many parameters they have to load in to begin with for it to even start to make any sort of decisions. But they're not really decisions, are they?
And also the emotionality of it,
Well, there is no emotion.
Yeah, but that's the thing, and the emotionality is probably one of the most important things for filmmaking. So there are some critical elements that are missing. Yeah. I mean, you might be able to get away with it with some TV shows, maybe, low-rent TV shows.
I think any formula.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I like news, for instance, where
Possibly.
you go to this, then you go to this, then you go to this. But if you're trying to get an emotional reaction, you can't have two people on the set crying and giving looks. The AI wouldn't differentiate, okay, what are they doing? Yeah. Okay, do I cut to the tear or the little glance up? That feeling, that emotional.
Yep.
And until AIs can replicate, I guess, emotions, I think they're a long way off into, I don't know, covering our creative industries at best. Oh, thank you, Emma. It's been awesome. It's been a wonderful insight. Before you go, though, I do want to ask you, you're an advocate for, female filmmakers. So you're part of WIFT and
Swag.
And Swag.
Yeah.
So tell me about those two organisations. I know WIFT, so Women in Film and Television.
Yep.
And I don't know, what's Swag?
So Swag. Swag is Screen Women's Action Group.
Okay. And what are you actioning?
What are we actioning?
So you're not out there with pickets?
No. It's kind of it's quite an organic organisation.
Okay.
Grassroots organisation. So
Really?
There's 7 women that are part of that that are sort of within the industry and different jobs, and that organisation came about because at the November last year, near the tail end of the height of the Me Too movement.
Oh yes, yeah.
One of a director I'm working with actually put a thing out on Facebook, I think, or some social media outlet, and so I said, what do people think about what's going on with sexual harassment here in New Zealand? And the feedback was overwhelming.
Really?
Yeah, there was a deluge. And so I think she acknowledged that something needed to be done. People wanted to talk about it, and there was an issue here. So some people try to think that New Zealand was exempt. I mean, well, we're part of the globe.
Come on, this is the industry they gave the casting couch, and we all know what that is.
So I think that we're not. New Zealand is not exempt.
Okay, right.
We are very much part of a world, and it's not just a Hollywood problem. It's not just an American problem. It's actually a problem that's global, and it's not just a problem that's in our industry. It's everywhere.
Okay.
So that's kind of where Swag was born, really, and we came. There was a few of us that were connected to this director, Gason Thabert, and we came together and realised that we needed to go and consult. We needed to talk to our people in our industry.
Yep.
So we held these 2 forums, one in Auckland and one in Wellington, and we talked a long time whether they should be female-only events or men and women.
Okay.
And we decided in the end to make them women-only because we felt that some women may not come, and if they did come, they may not feel comfortable speaking if men were there.
Yeah.
And I think in the end it was I'm pretty sure it was the right decision in the end. We had a lot of women come up and thank us for doing that.
Oh, wow.
So that was really good. And it was amazing how much we achieved in that time. We didn't really know how it was going to work, but it was very, very successful.
What did you achieve
The
out of
two
that?
things that we kind of focused on, what were the issues that women were experiencing or that they knew of, and what was and what we were going to do about it.
Yes.
There were lots of things spoken about, but the one thing that came through very, very strongly was the fear of being blacklisted.
Right, especially in a small or very intimate industry.
Yeah,
the film industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's and that fear is real. It's because it's so hierarchical. So as soon as you have hierarchy, there's a power imbalance.
Yes.
So you can't get away from that.
Jeez, yeah.
So it's totally set up to have issues like this.
Yeah.
And that's why it was such a big deal, and it was exposed in America. But the reality is it's everywhere. And then in regards to what we were going to do about it, there were lots and lots of brilliant ideas which we put together in recommendations, but the one thread that came through the most strongly was for prevention was education.
Okay.
And it was for education that we needed to focus on to help prevent this behaviour so it didn't get to that point. So we put all the recommendations that came out of those 2 forums.
And so when you say education, is that saying how to notice these kind of
everything
events?
Yeah, education for the whole entire industry.
Okay.
Of like what actually sexual harassment is.
Right.
How
Yeah.
you deal with it.
Yeah.
If you sexual education for the person who if they're having that happen to them.
Yes.
Where do they go? What do they do? What do they say? And then also the same for people who receive a disclosure. What should they do?
Right.
How do they handle it?
Yes.
So it was kind of education for everybody. So we put those recommendations together. Now we're trying to get some funding from the government.
Mm-hmm.
And we should hear about that later on this month. And then we'll go into our next phase. We really need to get our men involved. We've got a lot of support from men.
Okay.
So we're really keen to get key figures in the industry who are leaders to help champion our cause.
Okay.
Because we want everybody to be safe.
Yeah,
And there are a lot of stories that are current right now, not only historical. There are a lot of things that are going on that are not healthy and not good, and women are absolutely undermined, and it's pretty dire. So we really want to do something about it, and we want the whole industry to come in and support us. We've been working very closely with the guilds.
Okay.
We'll be tied in closely with ScreenSafe because it is a health and safety issue.
Yes.
ScreenSafe has been really great at rolling out physical safety issues and how to deal with that, so we don't have a problem with WorkSafe because there's a big money stick if you muck it up.
Oh, no.
But we also want there to be psychological and emotional safety to be included in that because we think everybody has a right to be safe when they're on set.
Oh,
Yeah.
whether at work or whether at home.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's
Yeah.
our society is kind of built on that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really important.
I think that's one of the good things about, and that's what I kind of respect with, the law and the police force. At the end of the day, they're there to keep most things safe. So, and when you do need them, it's a breath of fresh air, really. It's a very welcoming. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, so it's but it's an amazing.
I didn't know it was that rife. That
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
more in the television industry, but I guess it happens there too. But is it more prevalent in film than in television?
No, I think it's right across the board.
Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite amazing in the forums we split everybody into groups. So we had a group table of directors and table of producers and so on and so forth. And almost every single table had an issue that was happening right then and there.
Wow.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of comments and disclosures that have come to SWAG in the time. So, yeah, I don't know if incidents have necessarily increased. But I do think the disclosures have, which is actually a positive thing. That people are talking about it and saying and calling it out. And bystander intervention is really important. So everybody, if they're saying something that's not right, they should be calling it out because that actually really helps the person who it's happening to.
Yeah.
If they feel like they've got the support of their team around them.
And so is SWAG now? Is it an organisation? Is it something that tangible that people can go to a website on, or?
No, that would probably not yet.
Not yet,
but that will be in the next phase that we're doing. That will be part of that. So it's as I say, it's very grassroots at the moment. So it's kind of on.
Well,
we have a social media presence.
Yeah. Okay.
And people know that we're around and that we exist and what we're about.
Well done you, Emma.
Yeah. Oh,
So
I just
film
really
wasn't enough. You got to have something.
I just really
always
care.
have to have a cause.
Oh no, I really care about. It's not the cause so much, but I really care about industry and I really care about our people. And there are a lot of amazing people out there, and some of them have been. It's not some of the way they're treated isn't fair, and I have a big thing for justice. So I think that's I think it's important.
I think treat everyone equally. Hey, no matter who they are. I think you were saying earlier.
It's a respect thing.
It is. Everyone's human. Everyone has a job to do. It's just different, and they have different perspectives. And but at the end of the day, hopefully they all come together and work on the same thing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on My Couch in Space. Episode 10, I did it. That's it. Season 1 done. Well, that's why I'm calling a season anyway. See how now I need an audience test and see what recommendations I get for making the show even better.
Congratulations, you made
People
it.
probably say, oh, get rid of the stupid space background. Why is that dog just sleeping there? Should be doing tricks, hey? No, she's good. Right, thank you again, Emma.
No worries.
It was fascinating to talk to you.
Yeah,
And
cool. Nice to be here.
Yeah, we'll have to have another chat sometime
Indeed.
as well. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. See you later.
Couch in Space!